Welcome back to another episode of Scuttlebutt, the official podcast of the National Museum of the Surface Navy. I'm Marian Fengler, and when we left off, we were talking with José Hernández, one of the riggers of USS Constitution. Jose, Mike Getcher, David Canfield, and me geeking out about ropes and lines and all kinds of good stuff. Let's get back into it.
Do you have much experience with Samson braid?
Samson braid? Yeah, sure.
We're running 3 5/8 diameter nominal 400,000 pound MBL mooring lines. They're $8,000 a piece. And in the last year, we started to see what I believe to be core failure, where they just you keep tightening them and they just start to just.
They're 12-strand construction?
I don't know. Probably
single braid.
More.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Single
braid. Or no, it's double braided.
Oh, is it double braid stuff? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just looked at the spec because I'm writing it up for one of our potential donors, but it's a double braid. It's what the Navy specified as nylon. And they tend to do okay, but we're just seeing now in this last year, this kind of stretching where they just kind of keep going. You tighten them up, and then you're just within a day it's already drooping, and all I can think of it's a core failure. But I don't really know. When I take it apart and look at it, it just looks like it's fine, but there's no question it's failing. It's pretty wild. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, for double braid, the concept, or even for single braid, the concept is the Chinese finger knot thing, where the braid tightens up as it elongates, and that creates enough friction to support it. Now, what generally happens with double braid, if you don't cross stitch it to anchor it from not falling out when it's not under tension, because when it's under tension, it should be holding, given if you follow the instructions and you leave a left tail buried so that there is enough friction given the specifications of that particular line. You will find that when it's just laying about, somebody might kick the eye or whatever and pull the tail out. And that's what usually happens. So that's why after you do one of these splices, you will do some cross stitching in it. Some people will even go so far as to clamp on this big old seizing down at the crotch of the eye, which is actually superfluous. You just don't want it to shift.
I'm not seeing eye failure, I don't think. We end up with these Kevlar wraps around the eyes just for chafing, but
right, sure.
It's kind of odd. You can actually see the cross section of the line starts to flatten.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think there's something going on in the core, but these things are under some tremendous strain. I mean,
well, how old are they? That could be part of it too.
Well, some of them are 3 or 4 or 5 years old, and they're, these are mooring lines on a permanently moored vessel.
Right.
Yeah. Then the Navy specification probably does not take into account a vessel that is moored for a decade.
Oh,
Yeah.
They're incidental mooring when you have a carrier pulling into port, or when we were underway on the Battleship and we pulled into port. I can't think of a time where we were in port more than 30 days or 45 days.
We were pretty close to being underway last week.
Yeah, we were.
We were very close to being underway. In fact, I got a call last
really
night from
close.
somebody who was concerned we might be getting underway again. So
We were translating fore and aft at least 15 feet, Jose, at least full degree, 1 degree rolls, which is crazy. 45,000 ton vessel. By the way, that email from Joe Sinkowitz, the highest recorded wave in San Pedro in 25 years or 24 years.
Oh, wow. Great.
35 offshore, 35 foot. Yeah.
Aside from the tremendous amount of damage it was doing to the pier and to the mooring lines and to the gangways, I was sitting in my office and felt pretty good, actually.
Well, I've been saying since I got here, I was curious what she felt like underway, and now I have a little bit of an idea of it.
I was standing by the afterbrow, just, kind of focused on the pier and watching the pier slip away about 15 feet. And it very much felt like that first moment when you slip the final line and get underway.
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, it shouldn't feel that way.
I think it's easy, and I talk about this with staff, for us to kind of get semi-complacent. I certainly don't, because I'm always losing sleep over stuff like this. But you just come aboard the ship every day and it's no big deal. Hey, she's tied up. It's fine.
Yeah,
But the reality is that she's a 45,000 ton vessel moored, soft moored, as I call it, in the main channel of one of the busiest ports in the world. And there are conditions here which will, in fact, break things. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, and like when the ro-ros and the cruise ships and stuff go by, she wants to go with them.
Yeah, we basically came within minutes, or at least 30 minutes, of calling a tugboat on last Thursday night.
Yeah,
just to kind of calm her down. So it gets exciting here once in a while.
Right. Well, and back to the material. I mean, nylon is a good source because you want something springy. You don't want something that doesn't have any stretch on it.
Agreed.
Because that would just cause other elements of like cleats and stuff to fail.
Yeah.
Things
It's that giant vectored force problem again. You'll begin taking bits of the pier with you, right?
Well, that's actually really important for a couple of reasons, but we often receive, speaking of that earlier comment I made about nobody knows that we know what we know. I have all kinds of experts tell me, oh, we should just put chains on her. I was like, no, I'm going to start ripping bits and bollards off. That's all there is to it. The bits are designed for ropes up on the ship. They're the second largest bit in the U.S. Navy inventory ever. I think are 21 or 22-inch bits. And the bollards on the dock, many of them are only 50-ton bollards. I mean, our lines are tougher than our bollards are. So
we have about 13 or 14 right now.
14, because we got the
lines.
headline on right now. But yeah, it's an interesting problem, and I have to follow largely the Navy design, of how they set up the mooring system. So, anyways, we're obviously fine here, but it's a
It was
challenge.
an interesting evening.
Yeah, it's pretty scary if you're a real mariner and you're not ignorant. I'm not.
Yeah.
And you see 45,000 tons move and you start getting a little nervous.
Yeah, there's a lot of power. There's just so much momentum.
Yes.
The mass of that thing. Yeah. Bringing the thing back around to, like, say, standing rigging in issues of, you've got, let's say you've got wire rope standing rigging and you've got a dead eyes and lanyard situation. Dead eyes and lanyards are really good in the sense that they're the weak link in the chain there of failure. So if you need to cut the rigging away under dire situations, you can cut it away, and as opposed to you've got turnbuckles or whatnot, that's going to take you a little longer to get rid of. But just determining what's the strongest element in that chain of connection. Say, are you ripping chain plates out of the ship, or are you breaking masts, or it'd be favorable to
What's the least worst case scenario?
Exactly. Where's the damage going to happen, and you want to minimize that. You always have to think of that stuff ahead of time. That's why when things are built, they're always built with a safety factor, because things are going to happen.
Well, it's always interesting.
Mariners, we all know that.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, indeed.
Things are going to
You
happen.
haven't had a thing happen. You're not technically a mariner yet.
Right. And the thing is, you can do everything right and still have things happen.
Yes. Yes.
It's not necessarily skill. Sometimes it's just luck.
It always amazes me too, because you would send me pictures and stuff while you guys were working, and you'd be up there in like a man lift or on a crane or whatever to work with the rigging, and you hear about them just replacing it in the middle of a battle or an engagement. Like in the time it took them to like come around for another pass, they'd like drop a topgallant mast or topgallant yard and send another one up. Like, what?
That's what I wanted to comment on. I'm reading 6 frigates right now, which is the story of the beginning of the U.S. Navy.
Yeah,
and it's an extraordinary story in a couple of levels. One of it, I got to admit, is the politics.
Yeah,
the politics was amazing.
Easily as horrific as they are now.
Yeah.
The disagreement, and I mean, we've learned nothing in 250
yes,
years.
exactly.
So,
I agree.
But the stories of the maritime stories are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the Constitution, of course, I've walked her decks. I've been down to the keel. It's amazing to be able to stand on that, even though, in the classic sense of, I have my dad's hammer, I've replaced the head twice and the hammer or the handle 3 times. There's a lot of her that's not original, but still, she's still there. And it's just amazing. And that's really where our heritage now, or I'm sorry, where our focus is now as a museum, is the National Museum of the Surface Navy. The origins of that are in fact the Constitution and the other 5 frigates.
Yes.
And it's wonderful to be able to connect that and find out that there's still people working on these things and doing what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that was a great joy to me while I was working on her, aside from the rigging, which was a lot of fun, it was a dream job. You know, one of my fellow riggers asked, "So Jose, what would your dream job be? You know, if you could do anything in the world?" I'm like, "Dan, I'm doing it."
Yeah.
You know, he's like, "No, really." I'm like, "No, really. This is yeah."
Yeah, I started to say that when we started the podcast and you introduced what you were doing. It is a wonderful thing to be able to work where your passion is.
Yes.
It also can destroy your work-life balance if you're not careful, because you're passionate about it and your head's down on it. But I think a lot of the people on this podcast are finally landing, you know, working where their passion is, and that's a beautiful thing.
It's like Joseph Campbell said, "Follow your bliss."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Joseph,
I had my
iconography.
My boss, when I left Google, which was my former employer, I told him I was going to go to work for the museum. He looked at me and he said, "You know, I hate to see you go, but follow your dreams, because if you're not following your dreams, you're helping somebody else follow theirs."
Well, you know, my boss at the lab allowed for me to segue into rigging because he would give me those half days. You know, I'd come, you know, back to the lab and finish, you know, do a full day's work after. But you know, it really helped me get my foot in the door and do it professionally.
Yeah, that's
But-
kind of how I started too. Just you
Yeah.
go step into that and take that part-time intermittent temporary job.
And so much as the drive of curiosity and just reaching out and saying, "Hey, you know, you might not even be paid at first, but your curiosity drives you to go learn it. And then sometimes you end up learning it to the point where you can get paid for it."
Yeah.
And that's actually a really great way to start. I find, like,
Well, and
starting at the bottom is brilliant.
it's a great lesson for people to take away too. If you're interested in doing something, stop looking at what can't be done and start looking at what can be done. Always phrase your conversation on what can be done. Go ask the question, go get involved, you know, volunteer, see if you can get paid for it. But don't take no for an answer. Just, you know, be persistent and chase your dream.
Well, my attitude has always been try to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing I wanted to touch on before we're out of time, we keep coming back to the beauty that is in that rigging on Constitution, and it is functional. I mean, she was a warship. She was not there just to look pretty. She was there to be functional and had a great reputation for doing so. But I'm always reminded when I go like aboard the Olympia and you go down into the engineering spaces on the Olympia and you see the care and the artwork and artistry that is in something as simple as piping, steam piping, or the valve work, or the beauty that is in the castings. And I'm always reminded of one of my favorite quotes that sits on the wall of my office on the ship. It's a quote by Gustav Eiffel that says, "Must we assume that because we are engineers, beauty is not our concern, and though we tried to make our constructions robust, we do not also strive to make them elegant?"
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yes.
I wanted to come back to that too, because you know, functionality is wonderful, but the art is absolutely critical. And
Well, I've definitely been in some engine rooms where everything is running hither and thither, as opposed to you see other ones that are so well organized. And again, with the piping or electrical wiring and how it's easy to follow. And, you know, again, going back to if you're in a situation and you need to troubleshoot something, you know, say in a seaway, it's a lot easier, you know, it's a lot faster. You'll find the solution faster by having an orderly arrangement of components.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In such a place.
well, this place will drive you nuts because there's a lot of hither and thither.
But there's a lot of beauty too.
There is beauty. I very much agree. But it's, in fact, the switchboards will just blow. They still blow me away. I mean, I really am impressed. But she's been modified so much. There's a lot going on.
I always laugh at the down in the HT shop. There's this beautiful workbench which was stamped. All the people who were in Tokyo Bay when the Japanese surrender occurred, and there's this beautiful chain, that has been stamped into there with all the names. And then next to it, stamped into it, are the names of the people that were there for the dedication of the Statue of Liberty in the 80s when they did the centennial, and then the decommissioning. And you look at it and you're like, these are my shipmates. I very much want to be proud of them. They just didn't have the craftsmanship of the people that were doing that during World War II. There's no comparison. When you look at the two of them side by side, you're like, oh, that's a shame.
Well, one of the things, bringing that back, so one of my mentors his name was Joe Sones. He was a rigger for the Navy, as I was, in terms of I was a civilian employee of the Navy, as he was, but he retired as a master rigger at Long Beach Naval Shipyard. But he got his start at Mare Island as well in 1941.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was, but you were talking about the craftsmanship, and so interestingly enough, I have his old serving mallet, which is for those who don't know, a serving mallet in the old traditional way where you would have a rope rig, you would or even with modern wire, when you want to keep the elements out or do chafe protection, you will wrap the wire or the rope with marline. First, they call it worm, parcel, and serve. You would worm
and
the
parcel with the way,
lines.
turn and serve the other way.
Exactly. Then you would put parceling, which would be canvas, and then you would take the marline, which is hemp, 2-strand hemp cord, and then you'd wrap it around very tightly and then tar that. And then, so with a serving, and that's called serving. And so you put the serving mallet that he had, the pattern makers at the shipyard had made this for him. And you look at the construction, there's a spool on it, and the 2 wheels on the spool, the construction, it's not like one piece of wood or a piece of plywood or anything like that. It's each one of those sides of the spool is 3 layers thick of multiple, 6 arcs, if you will, coming together. It's just a thing of beauty to see that kind of craftsmanship on something so simple.
Yeah.
And I cherish it. I use it often. Joe passed away some time ago now, but I use his tools almost on a daily basis.
Love to see a picture of that. That'd be cool. I love tools. I'm a tool guy.
Yeah. Well, when I was hoping to do this from the shop, and that was all hanging on the wall behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, technology doesn't let us do that. So,
well, you can send me some photos, and I'll put them in the video version of this.
I will. Yes, definitely.
All right. Well, God, we could go on for hours here, but this has been wonderful. Thank you, Jose, so much for being here. It's been
this is a lot of fun. I really enjoy talking to you guys, and we could definitely go on talking for hours.
Yeah, we'll do this again. We'll have you back.
Well,
if you get out here, we'd love to get you up on the mast and, tie some knots or something.
Yeah, you come back and we'll take you everywhere.
Yeah. I need to do a full tour of the boat.
Yeah.
I meant to do that some time ago, and I never got a chance to before I left LA. So
Cool.
Well, we know a couple people that might be able to help you out with that. So.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this latest episode of Scuttlebutt, the official podcast of the National Museum of the Surface Navy. Jose joined us today. We love the preservation of history. That's what we're all about, connecting the past with the future and seeing how those things still connect and are relevant today. If you have ideas for podcasts or topics or questions, comments, send them to podcast, PODCAST, podcast at labattleship.com, or podcast, as I like to say, at labattleship.com. We will be glad to hear from you and put those in effect. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode of Scuttlebutt.